Cassius is running out of road, and that is exactly why this whole thing feels so off to me. The Nathan act is holding together just long enough for everyone to get comfortable, and that is usually when General Hospital pulls the rug. The way I see it, Cassius was never built to be the big bad in this story. He feels more like a tool, a pressure point, a man standing in the middle of someone else's trap, trying to smile through the smoke while the walls keep closing in. And that matters, because once Dante starts tightening the net, Cassius is going to have fewer and fewer places to hide. We already know the cracks are showing. Britt is not buying the full picture, and that is huge. Britt has a way of looking at a situation and spotting the ugly truth before everyone else even realizes the party is over. If she starts sensing that Sidwell is bigger, darker, and more dangerous than what anyone first assumed, then Cassius is in real trouble. Not because he is suddenly the top villain in the room, but because he is exactly the kind of guy who gets crushed when the real power players stop needing him. That is the part I keep coming back to. Cassius does not feel like a man with his own empire. He feels like a man surviving inside somebody else's. And if you ask me, that changes everything. Because when a character is positioned like that, there are only two ways out. He either breaks first and tells everything, or he flips sides and tries to save himself before the whole operation explodes. Right now, both paths look possible. And both of them would set off a chain reaction that GH would absolutely love to unleash. The pressure is already building around Dante. He is not just circling Cassius for fun. He is digging, watching, connecting dots. And once Dante starts seeing the pattern, this stops being a quiet suspicion and turns into a full-blown hunt. That is when the real danger starts. Because the moment Cassius realizes Dante is closing in, he has to make a choice. Keep lying and hope nobody pushes too hard. Or start talking and hope he can trade information for survival. Either way, the mask starts slipping. And that is where Britt comes in again. Because Britt noticing more than she is saying could mean she is already seeing the structure behind the chaos. It seems that she may be starting to realize Sidwell is not just some name in the background. He could be the center of gravity. The force holding all of this together. If so, then Cassius is not the mastermind. He is the messenger. The disposable part. The guy sent into the fire because someone higher up knows they can burn him without losing sleep. That is such a GH move, by the way. Take a character who looks like a threat, then slowly reveal he is really a walking loose end. A man with too much knowledge and not enough protection. And once that happens, the story gets nastier. Because Cassius does not just become a problem for Sidwell. He becomes a problem for everybody who has crossed his path. Lulu, Dante, Rocco, Jocelyn. Suddenly, all the emotional landmines are stacked in one place, and all it takes is one bad move for the whole family mess to go nuclear. That family angle is what makes this feel especially dangerous. Lulu and Dante already carry enough history to make any new revelation hit harder than it should. Add Rocco into that equation, and the fallout gets personal fast. We are not talking about a random undercover twist here. We are talking about a family being dragged into something they never asked for, something that could twist old wounds open again. And that kind of drama is exactly where GH likes to live. Not just in the reveal itself, but in the emotional rubble afterward. What if Cassius does crack under the pressure and starts spilling pieces of the truth? That could mean Lulu gets pulled into the center of the storm before she is ready. Dante could find out he has been chasing the wrong target the entire time. Rocco could end up caught between adults who are all telling fragments of the same ugly story. And then there is Jocelyn, who feels like the wild card nobody can fully control. She may already know more than she should. And once a character like that starts holding too much information, the story gets dangerous in a hurry. Because information is power in Port Charles. And information at the wrong time is a bomb. That is why I do not think Cassius gets to stay hidden much longer. The setup is too loaded, too crowded with secrets. Too many people are hovering around the same truth without realizing how close they are to it. There's a strong chance Cassius gets exposed completely, and once that happens, he stops being useful. That is when Sidwell would have no reason to protect him. If anything, Sidwell would probably be the first one to toss him aside. A neat little sacrifice, a cleanup job, a way to make the problem disappear before anyone can trace the real source. And that, to me, is where the real twist lives. If Cassius is thrown under the bus, it will not just be because he failed. It will be because he knows too much. That is the classic GH move. The expendable piece gets blamed, so the bigger scheme can stay buried a little longer. But that never lasts. It always unravels. Always. And when it does, the explosion is usually bigger than anyone predicted. I keep thinking about what happens if Cassius senses that coming and decides to betray Sidwell first. That would be messy, but it would also make sense. A man trapped this deep does not need to be loyal. He needs to survive. So what if he starts feeding selective truths to Dante or to someone else with enough pull to protect him? What if he tries to trade a chunk of the puzzle for immunity? That could save him for a moment, but it would also turn him into a target from both sides. Sidwell would see him as a traitor. The opposition would see him as a liability. And that is exactly how a character gets cornered into the worst possible ending. No one saw this coming would be the cleanest way to describe it, because the story is shaping up to be less about Cassius as a villain and more about Cassius as the crack in the dam. Once that crack widens, everything behind it starts to surge forward. The scheme, the lies, the real agenda, and if Sidwell has been playing a much bigger game than anyone suspected, then Cassius might be the first sign that the whole thing is about to come apart. That is why I think the next stretch is going to be all about exposure. First, the uneasy glances, then the suspicious questions. Then one bad slip, one wrong name, one piece of evidence that should never have surfaced. And suddenly, Cassius is not floating around in the background anymore. He is front and center, staring down the consequences of every lie he has told. At that point, the only question left is who gets to him first? Dante, Sidwell, or the truth itself. And honestly, that is the most dangerous option of all. Because once the truth starts moving, nobody in this family story gets to stand safely on the sidelines.
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.